I forgot who. They take blame. All right, let's check for some updates going on in the courtroom. They were going back and forth. Should this be let in? Should it not? How should it be? People going to be wearing headphones? And it said here, the prosecution seems like they wanted it excluded. This situation where they had a bar fight, where she had a bar fight. Combs, Diddy suspected she was cheating on him. She did not answer her phone. She got into a bar fight. They're claiming here she tried to kill someone. And they're saying it's relevant. The defense is arguing this is relevant in her substance abuse outside of their sexual relationship. They're saying this is all relevant. Also, the defense says she was taking drugs while with her close family in another state. So they're saying she was on her own doing this stuff. Judge says that I will overrule the government's objection. This can be asked about. Now, prior consistent statements, we're talking about sequencing issue. Are they on direct or in rebuttal? Prosecution says in their opening, they said Miss Ventura made her own choices. They asked who really had control in this relationship, clearly begging the answer that it was Miss Ventura. Exhibit B315, the threat to release the sex tape, they said only she had it. That's prosecution. Combs, Alexandra Shapiro. We submit that these are hearsay until redirect. Judge says if they come in, they're in. You don't object. Shapiro says we do. What we said in the opening was that Mr. Combs, the judge says you seem to say she was lying about threats to release videos. And that's where it stopped. I said bring it all in. Bring it in. Let them hash it out. Let the jury, let the public see. As far as the videos, that I don't know. The videos, the thing is, I think it's important for the jury. I feel like if this was being live streamed, it would be more questionable. Okay, do we show the tapes to the public? That I understand. Like, okay, maybe we shouldn't play this on a live stream for everybody to see. But in the courtroom, definitely the jury should see it. It's probably going to be rough, but the jury should see it. And I don't know about the people in the courtroom, though. 76% people voted yes, the press should be able to see the freak-offs. 23% said no freak-off videos for the press. Somebody here said, let them cook. Let them cook. Let's see. Got a lot of people talking about this case. People saying ain't no party like a Diddy party. Let's do that. Let's try to get this on the screen because I'm curious. I want to know what people are saying too, on the internet, the interwebs. What are people saying? Let's see if this updates properly. What are people saying? Ain't no Diddy like a party. Diddy party. Let's try this. Let's see what's going on. We submit that these are hearsay until redirect. That's what the prosecution says. The judge said if they come in, they come in. Shapiro said we do. What we said in the opening was that Mr. Combs, the judge interrupts and says, You seem to say that she was lying about threats to release the video. Shapiro then says, the predicate for prior consistent statements hasn't been met. Judge says, I find it has for this exhibit. The defense opening said there would be a million of reasons for people to testify here. That's the attack that was used as to B3162. The judges clock it. What is it? What the young kids say now? Clock it. Is that what they say? I don't know what the kids are doing now. Diddy freak off party. Them freak offs.
That was kind of her mention there beyond, what the government was talking about as far as, alleged victims in this case and that type of sort. They had mentioned Kim Porter and how Cassie was jealous of Kim Porter's relationship with Diddy and that type of thing. And then everything kind of ended as soon as Kim Porter had passed away. Cassie went to her memorial service, and that was the last time she had seen Diddy, even prior to her expectation that she'll be inside that courtroom testifying. These jurors are going to see some of these freak off videos, but they say that it was taken from Cassie's devices, not Diddy's devices. And so, they talked about Mia, for example, who had worked with Diddy for a number of years, and the defense says, they want jurors to evaluate her motive to testify. When they were talking about Jane Doe, it was the same thing, that this was a jealous relationship. Jane wanted to be more public, whereas Diddy, he flaunted other relationships that weren't with Jane and that type of thing. So those were some of the biggest takeaways from the defense's openings, as well as the government's openings as well, too.
These are the arguments we anticipated. Now, obviously, there's a lot more detail to it. We're hearing it in an official capacity. And these jurors, while they might have heard certain aspects of this case, this is the first time, presumably, both arguments are being positioned to them for the first time in such a very particular way. And this is opening statements. It's not evidence, but it is the start, the official start of Sean Combs' criminal trial. Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much for reporting. Go back into that courthouse. Stay safe out there. There's a lot of interesting characters you're seeing.
Yeah, there's people out there screaming. Free Diddy. People out there screaming. Diddy party, man. Let's see what else. What other updates we got? The jury. Reminder. Jury is still not even in there. We're almost at 10 o'clock now. Okay. So the judge says, but the standard has not been reached as to B332 and B339. Okay, Mr. Phillip, in the witness box, then bring the jury. All rise. Here we go. We're finally starting. Combs attorney Xavier Donaldson. So to continue, you return to the Gramercy Hotel. Male dancer says yes. I wonder if we should try to recap the male dancer from yesterday. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Let me read this first. Let's do a little kind of a recap from his testimony, because it's going to take a while to update anyway. So everybody knows, so we all know what's going on. So in an extremely graphic testimony that lasted about an hour, Phillip was questioned by the lead prosecutor, Maureen Comey, about his sexual encounters with Combs and his then girlfriend Cassie Ventura. From around 2012 to 2014, according to Phillip, this is the escort, he was paid between $700 and $6,000 on several occasions to have sex with Ventura, as Combs watched and took care of himself. Kind of like the cuck thing, they always say, like, some people sometimes they're in a corner watching while their person does this. On more than one occasion, he witnessed Combs physically abusing Ventura, and in one instance, he was given the drug MDMA. Phillip was first pulled into Combs' orbit when he was working as a manager of a male revue show in Manhattan around 2012. One night, his boss asked if he could go to the Gramercy Park Hotel for a bachelorette party. So that's what they're talking about today. Gramercy Park Hotel bachelorette party because none of his dancers were available. Philip believed he would arrive at the hotel and perform a striptease for a group of women. Instead, Ventura opened the door to her hotel room and asked if he was okay engaging with just her. So he thought he was going to be doing a show and all this stuff. The door opens. It's Cassie. I want this private thing for me, I guess. As Philip remembers it, Ventura was wearing lingerie, high heels, and sunglasses, and she told him it was her birthday, and her husband arranged a special gift for her. She immediately handed him a few $1,000s. Combs was in the room too. Ventura asked Philip to rub baby oil on her and massage her, and assured him that Combs was not gay. Okay. I'm not sure what whatever. So yeah, he's not gay. He's just watching. Some people like to watch. Some people got that thing, I guess, they like to watch and stuff. So assured that he's not gay and would not touch him. Philip did not immediately recognize Combs because remember yesterday, Diddy was wearing this white robe, a bandana covering his face from his nose down. As Philip and Ventura touched each other and eventually began having intercourse, Combs sat in a chair in the corner of the hotel room, touching himself, fondling himself. At one point, Philip realized who the man was when Combs spoke. He recognized his voice. After a short time, Ventura handed Philip another few $1,000s in cash and sent him on his way. She took his phone number. A few minutes after he left the hotel, Philip received a text message from Ventura asking him to send a picture of his penis, his phallus, and to come back up to the room. He obliged, and for another few hours they rubbed baby oil on each other and had sex as Combs was in the corner again, touching himself. Philip would continue to engage in sexual relations with Ventura and Combs at hotels across Manhattan and each of their private residences in the city. Sometimes Philip would send Ventura vulgar texts like, "I want to F you right now." And sometimes he would text to ask if she was good. He cannot recall Ventura ever responding to said text. Philip said each time he met Ventura and Combs, there were candles and bottles of baby oil and Astroglide lubricant on the table. On one occasion, Combs directed Philip and Ventura to role play exercise. We were not very good at it at all. Combs would often tell Philip and Ventura to rub more baby oil on each other and would instruct Philip where to relieve himself. So Combs was like the director, do this, do that. I want you to do this here, relieve yourself here. And remember, supposedly those baby oils had drugs in there too. So I don't know if he was just, rub baby oil. He's hoping to get this guy high and more, receptive. He was always sitting in the corner touching himself, Mr. Diddy was. Philip said Combs, though, he added that on occasion Combs would switch places with him to engage in intercourse with Ventura. On one occasion, Ventura asked him to urinate on her, and rarely did they use condoms. Philip said these encounters would last anywhere from 1 to 10 hours. After he would have sex with Ventura, she would go into the bathroom with Combs and leave Philip waiting outside on a couch for hours. What were they doing in the bathroom? Were they getting high? Were they messing around? I don't know. Sometimes they would come back out and tell him to leave. Other times they would bring him back into the bedroom for another round of intercourse. Philip said Combs videotaped him having sex with Ventura once or twice on a cell phone and camcorder. One time Philip pretended to relieve himself after Combs instructed him to relieve himself inside of Ventura. After Combs brought Ventura into the bedroom, he repeatedly questioned Philip if he was sure he finished. Damn, that's weird. A guy doing that to you. Are you sure? Are you done? Or I got it. You done, man? Did you do it? Their interactions became more intense after Combs took a photograph of Philip's driver's license and said it was just insurance, just in case. I understood it to be he was threatening me. Philip said as Combs' attorney, Xavier Donaldson, yelled objection repeatedly, Many of Philip's objections were overruled by the judge, but Philip was sometimes reined in when he began to speculate. On one instance, Combs allegedly offered Philip MDMA, or Molly, which made Philip feel physically sick and nauseous and also euphoric. Philip left that night with a wad of cash and, still under the influence, began roaming the city. I went into the middle Times Square and handed out every single dollar he gave me. Dang. He didn't care about the money Ventura and Combs gave him, saying it was exciting to be around famous people. I never asked them for a single dollar. At a certain point, Philip said he began witnessing Combs physically abusing Ventura. One time he saw Combs throw a glass of bottle in Ventura's direction. Then he hit her and dragged her by the hair into another room. She was screaming and he pulled her into the bedroom. Philip said he could hear what sounded like him slapping her. She was screaming, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Philip said Combs said to Ventura, bitch, when I tell you to come, you come here. You come now, not later. I was shocked. It came out of nowhere. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. Philip said when asked why he didn't intervene or call police, he said, in my mind, if I try to do something, I might lose my life. He added, my thoughts were Combs was someone with unlimited power. My life was at risk. Philip said Combs would attempt to resume sexual activities directly after the alleged domestic violence. After he started witnessing the abuse, Philip had difficulty staying hard in the presence of Combs. Once or twice, Combs gave him Cialis, which treats erectile dysfunction. Philip said that on occasions in which he could not perform, he was not paid. So Diddy got everything. Allegedly, drugs, pills, drinks. If you can't get up, we're giving you the pills and stuff. We got everything. Philip detailed another incident at their Jew Mariah Essex House Hotel where he had heard screaming and slapping noises from behind the bedroom doors. Combs then vacated the hotel, leaving Philip alone with Ventura. According to Philip, Ventura jumped into his lap and began crying and kissing him, which she said had not done in previous encounters. Philip asked Ventura why she was staying in an abusive relationship, and she insisted that she was okay. The two of them began having sex, and Philip did not have trouble performing. While they had intercourse, they noticed Combs sneaking back into the room to watch. One time, at Ventura's home, Combs had invited another male sex worker who ended up getting in a verbal altercation with Combs after he accused him of looking at him during the threesome. So Combs doesn't want you to look at him. Don't look at what I'm doing in the corner. So that was a in-depth recap from yesterday to today. So he's testifying now. I thought that was like a good little thing for us to do to kind of understand what's going on. So let's fast forward now again to this morning because they just started. So hopefully it makes sense for everybody. So he takes the stand. Okay. This is cross-examination. So the defense goes, so to continue, you return to the Gramercy Hotel. We just talked about that. The escort says yes. Defense says, while you and Miss Cassie Ventura were having sex for hours, Miss Ventura took lead. Philip, the escort, says no. Defense says, you took the lead? Philip says, we were equally doing our thing. There wasn't a leader. Defense says, you decided together. Philip says yes. Okay. Defense says she paid with her credit card. The escort says, I have nothing to do with that. She used her card to pay for the dancer. Defense says, okay, that assault at her apartment on 11th Avenue. Escort says, I believe it was West End Avenue. Defense says, you claim Mr. Combs told her to come over. She said she had her personal information on the computer, so wait a minute, and threw a bottle at her. Escort says, correct. Defense says, he comes out and says, are you ready? Escort says, are you guys ready? Defense says, isn't it true Mr. Combs told you, yo, man, I'm going to have to deal with this. You need to get the F out. The dancer, the escort, says that is not correct. Defense says, in 2023, didn't you tell prosecutors that he said, yo, man? Prosecution says, objection, not evidence. Judge says, sustained. You can only use it to try to refresh his recollection. Defense says, read it yourself. Does it refresh you? Escort says, I do not remember saying that. What I'm reading here. Get the F out. Objection, the prosecution says, jumps up. Judge says, disregard that. And that's it. That's where we're at right now. So the recaps don't hurt because it's kind of a slow process of the tweets going out. So we're already caught up that quick with everything that was going on. I'm going to see if I can pull up some more information, though, about what's going on right now. The jury was walking in as the escort retakes the stand to continue his testimony and face the cross-examination. So today, Philip was wearing a suit and tie. Monday afternoon, when he testified that Cassie Ventura paid him multiple times to have sex in the presence of Sean Combs, on Tuesday, he wore a suit and tie on Monday. Today, he's wearing a light button-down shirt, untucked, and dark pants. So he's more casual today, casually dressed, a little more comfortable. Earlier, outside of the jury's presence, the judge and the lawyers were debating, are we going to let this whole bar fight come in? I totally think it should come in. I want to know about this bar fight that supposedly Cassie had. Combs wasn't there, and they're claiming she tried to kill somebody. I want to know about that. Let me see what other updates we can get. I think I'm just going to try to pull up multiple sources to get the pieces together that we can get. Let's see. Okay, we got a couple of sources. Let's see here. Live tweet updates. So they're saying prior to the start of the trial, numerous submissions by attorneys and prosecutors were sealed. The judge acknowledged that in his opening remarks about whether sexually explicit videos and images expected to be shown to the jury during the testimony by R&B singer Cassie should be viewed by members of the media. He said that while a lot had been handled under seal before the trial, we are now in trial and there's a heightened First Amendment concern. You know, people's right, I guess. Okay. Let's see, we got an update. Okay, a little update here. So the defense goes on to ask, did you date a model named Malia? Male dancer says, Malia and I didn't say I dated her. We were friends. Defense says, you were with her and saw Cassie with someone, not Mr. Combs. Philip says, yes. You told Malia you saw Cassie socially. Dancer says, yes. Defense says, you thought Cassie wanted to see you one-on-one. Nothing to do with Sean Combs, right? The dancer says, I don't know what you mean. Defense says, in front of the Dream Hotel, that's what you thought. He said no. Okay. So we're trying to get down to the nitty-gritty. I don't know if he's implying that he had feelings for Cassie. Did he have feelings for Cassie? Was he in love with Cassie, the male escort? Was he trying to be Captain Saver? You know? In his questioning, Sean Combs' lawyer, Xavier Donaldson, is trying to establish that Cassandra Ventura was a completely willing participant in the sexual encounters with him. Was Ventura the one who paid you? Philip said yes. She wasn't drunk or high. Philip agrees she was not. Is it fair to say she was in complete control of everything she did? Philip says, I cannot say that. Okay. So the cross-examination, they're trying to say she was a willing participant and establish all that. Let's see, we're left off at the hotel. Let me see how you guys are doing in the chat. If you could help me out with the like button too, Welcome. Good morning. They say Cassie might testify today. I'm very curious to see what Cassie could have to say. Let me refresh this. It's not updating. So 73% say yes, we should be able to see the freak off videos. 27% say no, no freak off videos. Well, the media. Ah. So we're still waiting on an update from this hotel situation. Making the band for MTV. Bad boy. Okay, there's according to this reporter, I'm still waiting for an update from Inner City Press. Oh, here we go. We got an update. Combs Donaldson, the defense attorney, says you only saw her inebriated one time. Escort says, I saw her passed out on the couch. Mr. Combs told me I don't think it's going to happen today. Defense says the time with the other male, you rotated? Escort says not correct. You watched? He says yes. According to this other person, says this is a person from the courthouse. Xavier Donaldson, Sean Combs' lawyer, just finished questioning Daniel Phillip, who said he was paid to have sexual encounters with Cassandra, on what the witness has said was the first time he saw Combs abuse her. Phillips testified yesterday that Combs threw a liquor bottle that missed Ventura and then dragged her by her hair into a bedroom. The defense is lingering on an important part of Phillips' testimony. After that, the abused Combs said, "Are y'all ready to continue?" Combs referred to the sex. Donaldson is suggesting that Phillip told law enforcement something different in the interview in late 2023, that Combs told him to leave the hotel after the dispute. The reason this is so important is because prosecutors are trying to prove that Combs forced or coerced Ventura into sex. If Combs pushed Ventura to continue with sex after he beat her, that is potentially powerful evidence. Okay. Everybody watching everybody. Damn. That's crazy though. To think about it from Cassie's point of view too. Just all these people, all these men. Yeah, where's Jonathan Odie? What's up with Jonathan? Where is Jonathan, man? That was crazy. The whole Jonathan thing. He's still locked up. Jonathan Odie. We could listen to some clips from Jonathan. Some Diddy parties. Defense says, you said Mr. Combs was directing, but do you recall meeting the prosecutors on March 28th, 2025, and telling them you didn't recall Mr. Combs giving directions about positions? Escort says yes. The defense says, so he didn't direct. He says incorrect. So he's saying you previously said he was directing. And you said Mr. Combs was directing, but do you call meeting with prosecutors and telling them you didn't? So at one point he said he was. At another point he said he wasn't. So what is it? Let's get this connected to the computer. Diddy, do it. Diddy, is he gonna get off, man? Can he pull it? You got the best of the best attorneys, top of the line. So it continues. You thought you were in a relationship with Cassie, didn't you? Oh, they're saying he fell in love. Fell in love with a stripper. They're saying he fell in love. The escort says no. Defense says you wanted to get alone with her, to date her, ? Escort says, if she let me, I would have. Escort says, oh, no, sorry. The prosecutor, sorry, not the prosecutor, I'm gonna mess up. The defense says, you'd get jealous of Mr. Combs, wouldn't you? He said no. So he's trying to imply here that this guy had feelings for Cassie. He started falling in love with her. He wanted to save her. He loved her, and he started getting jealous of Mr. Combs. And he said the defense said you wanted to get alone with her, to date her. And he said, well, if she let me, I would have dated her. I think he did like her. I think he did catch feelings for her. So the defense says, did you not tell them that Mr. Combs would tell you it's my turn? Sidebar! Can we have a sidebar? Objection. The prosecution yells or says it out loud. So they have a sidebar. They didn't like this. Where is this going? What are you implying here? What I would do to be inside that courtroom. Well, I don't know. It's got to be. It's an interesting trial, man. That should have been public, man. We should have had a public live stream of this trial.
Today is expected to be the day that Cassie actually testifies.
Let's go, baby.
I'm live.
She testifies.
Listen, today's the day that Cassie's supposed to be testifying. She was supposed to be testifying yesterday, but the security guard, there was a security guard, and then there was a SMEX worker that actually testified. The SMEX worker actually, well, you guys know, his testimony ran till 5. So it's expected that they might finish up with him today on cross and redirect, okay? He's already been questioned one time by the prosecution, one time by the defense, okay? After that, Cassie is expected to be. How do we know that she was expected to be here yesterday? So in the courtroom I was in, Alex Fine, her husband, was in the back, okay? He had a bodyguard. He looked not upset, but just angry, like he was ready for war. Oddly enough, there were a lot of Diddy supporters around. Somebody was sitting next to me in a Sean John tracksuit, and I said,
that's Tisa Tells. She's out there in person. She has a big YouTube channel. And like I said, because some people have come in here in support of Diddy, I don't think we should alienate those people. Whoever, people have the right to believe what they want to believe and support who they want to support, and there is a support. There's people that are standing with Diddy, and they think that this is BS or just this was a toxic relationship on both ends, but they don't believe that it rises to the racketeering and sex trafficking. It's interesting. It's really interesting. What's going on over here? All over the place. Let's see if we got some updates. Let's check out for the updates. So they're in a sidebar right now. So the attorneys are having, a private conversation with the judge so that the jury can't hear. An update from another reporter. So this reporter says defense attorney Xavier Donaldson is doing a lot of rehashing of what Daniel Phillips' testimony from Monday afternoon, meaning we're getting details about sexual positions, erectile dysfunction, and assault. This is all happening in front of Sean Combs' mother and children. Phillip has appeared very confident, though, on the stand, frequently countering Donaldson's questions. Right, so he's not backing down. Not backing down. And then a little bit earlier to this person that just said, prosecution witness Daniel Phillips said on cross-examination that after Sean Combs attacked Cassie at the Gramercy apartment, she ran to him shaking and terrified. Philip explained that he didn't immediately start having sex with Ventura after she was beaten by Combs, but that the encounter happened organically. She was shaking uncontrollably, obviously afraid, and we started talking for a while before we ended up kissing each other. So there's like this weird, toxic, crazy situation going on. Combs is watching, maybe on drugs, and she might be on substances too, and this is this toxic, abusive relationship, but also sex, and maybe that's all part of the part of the sex too. And she runs into this room shaking and crying, and they're having this heartfelt conversation, her and the escort, Daniel Phillip. And after this deep emotional conversation, they start kissing, and it leads to sex. And supposedly, I think from according to the tweets that we read, while that's happening and they get into this encounter, Combs walks in there and starts taking care of himself. Jeez. Okay. So the defense says, didn't you tell the government that you wouldn't feel jealous because you like Miss Ventura romantically? Phillip says, I do not recall that. Defense says, put up 35 through 37. Prosecution says, just for the parties. Phillip says, I do not recall that. He says, nothing further. Oh! So supposedly he had previously told, I really do believe that this guy caught feelings. It doesn't negate all the horrible stuff that's happened, but I think the guy did catch feelings for Ventura. He caught feeling in love with her. You know? You have feelings. Sometimes sex is not just sex. For some people it is, some it's not. Somebody catches feelings, you know what I'm saying? So they're saying that he had feelings for her. He wanted to date her. They even imply that maybe he got jealous. And he's not recalling previous testimony where he said that he liked her romantically. So now it's redirect. Prosecution says, please explain why you now say Mr. Combs directed you. Phillip says he asked about positions, but Mr. Combs did not tell us what to do. Oh, sorry. But Mr. Combs did tell us what to do. Use baby oil. Again, so the prosecution says, please explain why you now say Mr. Combs directed you. And he said that Combs asked about positions, but Mr. Combs did tell us what to do. Use baby oil. Prosecution says the timing of the handing of cash. How did the amount compare to your stripping services? Okay, waiting for an update on that. And who's next? Who's next? Is it going to be Cassie? Is Cassie testifying next? Fupa, thank you for the membership. Says thank you so much for covering this, man. I love being here. Thank you. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me in the chat. Gracias. I know a lot of people are streaming this. You can be anywhere. Lots and lots of people streaming. All right. Redirect. Waiting for the updates. This reporter here said the defense, one of Sean Combs' defense attorneys, is trying to highlight discrepancies in what Daniel Phillips told police officers about Combs' alleged attack on Cassie at her apartment. Okay. Sean Diddy Combs. Phillip agrees that he wanted their relationship to be deeper than just a voyeuristic sex nights. He wanted more. Had she ever given me the chance to date her, Phillip said, I absolutely would have. So he was interested in her. He liked her. Okay, so back to the stripping services. So how much, the timing of the handing of cash, how much, or how the amount, how did it compare to your stripping services? Phillip said $3,800 more. Prosecution says, how much were you paid to perform when you could? Phillip says $700 to $5,000 or $6,000. Prosecution says, and when you couldn't perform? Phillip says they paid me nothing. Prosecution says, did Miss Ventura call you after the Dream Hotel? Yes. And we're waiting now. Let's see what they're saying here. Dan Bowen's updates. So we're going to get some updates too from the media here. soon. Let's see. The audio for this guy.
They acknowledged Combs may have acted violently or recklessly at times, but argued none of it rose to the level of a federal crime, asserting that the women involved were adults who made personal choices. So we have the prosecution laying out their case, and then we have the defense sort of moving forward with what they're going to try to do, how they're going to try to pick apart this particular case. Yeah. All right. So it is, again, it is Tuesday, the 13th. Lower Manhattan. We are checking out the Diddy trial here. It is 10:31 on this morning. If you were paying attention yesterday, you know that this case got underway after a really lengthy process to figure out who the jury would be. They did get that jury seated. 12 members of the jury, additional alternates who have to be sworn in. Once they were sworn in, we got the opening statements from the prosecutors as well as from the defense. If we can, I just want to sort of lay out a little bit about what the prosecution said here, that they're alleging Sean Combs led 2-decade criminal enterprise, coerced women, including his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura, into drug-fueled sex acts. Those were referred to as freak-offs. You've probably heard that term at this point if you've been paying attention to this case. They say that these acts were filmed, used for blackmail. The government framed Combs' music empire as a cover for organized abuse and exploitation. I mean, we need to stop and sort of think about what they're saying there. His music empire as a cover for organized abuse and exploitation. So here we have Sean Combs, who is one of the most influential music figures of the last 30 years, to say the least, from the mid-1990s until maybe a little closer to today. And we know that they're saying that a lot of this was a cover for a criminal organization, which, when you really think about it, is a serious allegation. Their defense, Diddy's defense, they claim that all relationships were consensual, and they acknowledge that maybe Combs did have a domestic violence situation here, did act recklessly at times, but they argued none of it rose to the level of federal crimes, asserting that the women involved were adults who made personal choices. So here you have the prosecution laying out their statements. They want to tell a story. They want to lay out this story in a narrative fashion, in a timeline. They're going to present this evidence. They're going to present this video. They're going to present some text messages, witness testimony, and they're going to tell a story. At the same time, the defense, they will have their opportunity to try and pick apart that story and insert their narrative here and there. Things started very, you could call it explosive testimony right off the very beginning. Witness testimony came from a man named Daniel Phillip. He testified that he was hired to engage in sex acts with Cassie while Combs watched and participated. He also recalled seeing Combs assault Cassie in a hotel hallway, an event recorded on surveillance video that was shown to the jury. Now, this is the video that a lot of people have seen at this point, and so it is going to be at the heart of the case, and it is something that was debated about whether or not it could actually be included. Now, the defense said, okay, well, we may acknowledge that there was a domestic incident here, but this domestic incident isn't this federal crime that you're saying, so that's part of what they're already sort of laying out. A man named Israel Flores also testified. Now, he's a former bodyguard who claimed Combs offered him money to keep quiet about that 2016 hotel incident. He said he offered him a stack of cash. And he described a culture of control and fear all surrounding Combs. So if we could talk a little bit about that key evidence, the hotel video. So the jury, they were actually shown that 2016 surveillance video of Combs. That video alleges to show him assaulting Cassie Ventura. The footage, the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. And really they showed it because they want to show it and demonstrate a pattern of abuse and control. Sort of setting the scene for what things looked like in the courtroom yesterday. Combs' appearance. He entered the court. His hair was graying, and he engaged with his defense team, and he turned around, exchanged smiles with family members who were seated behind him. We know that at some points during the testimony yesterday that his family members sort of became visibly upset. Some of them, his daughters actually had to leave the courtroom because of the sexual acts that were being described involving their father. And so his mother, Diddy's mother, and his 6 children, all present in the courtroom, offering their support despite some of those disturbing allegations. That's just the first day. So again, jury seated, sworn in the morning, opening statements, defense arguments already. Then we heard from these 2 key witnesses. Daniel Phillip, he's the one who testified that he was basically an escort who was hired to perform these lewd sexual acts with Cassie, and Diddy was watching. And then Israel Flores, another individual, former bodyguard, who said that Combs actually offered him money to stay quiet about that video. So those were the 2 initial witnesses. The witness we're expecting to testify today
Cassie,
is
hopefully
going to be Cassie Ventura.
Yes.
A singer in her own.
All right, so let's pause for a minute. Let's get caught up. There's about 3 tweets. So they were talking about the money. How much did you get paid to perform, and what happened when you wouldn't perform? They paid him nothing. Did Ms. Ventura call you after the Dream Hotel? He said yes. That was the recap. Now, prosecution says, do you know who she was with? Philip says no. Prosecution says, did she answer your text messages? Philip said never, almost. Prosecution said, you said you wanted to hug her. Why? Philip said, I could see she was afraid. Prosecution, what did you do? Philip said, I could not engage. I was messed up. Prosecution says, what did Mr. Combs say to you? Philip says, he said, it's time for you to go. Prosecution says, in the Gramercy Hotel, who was in the hotel room? Philip says, Sean, Combs, myself, and Cassie. Prosecution says, when she appeared to enjoy herself, was Combs always in the room? Philip says yes. So they're trying to say maybe she was pretending to enjoy herself. Prosecution says, was that the same man who called her bitch and beat her? Philip says, I did not see the beating, I presume. Defense says, objection. Judge says, sustained. Prosecution says, you heard slapping. Yes. So he didn't actually see it. He heard slapping. Recross. Defense says, briefly. Defense says, this document, do you see where you said I'm on the Upper West Side? She says, 10 West End Avenue. Hit me when you're there. Philip says, yes. Defense says, do you see your text? Don't give a F if I'm a little tipsy. I love y'all. N-word. Philip said, yes. Oh. So he's doing a recross. He's talking about this document. Do you see where you said I'm on the Upper West Side, 10 West End Avenue. Hit me when you're there. So she said 10 West End Avenue. Hit me when you're there. He says yes. Do you see your text when you say don't give a F? I'm a little tipsy. I love y'all ninjas. Philip said yes. Okay. So we're caught up. We're waiting. Hopefully Cassie today.
On this individual. But his defense sort of strategy has been that that's not the crime that he's facing. The crime that he's facing is a racketeering charge, a RICO allegation. The crime he's facing has to do with kidnapping. And so that's part of what they're going to be talking about. And so when she testifies, they're not going to shy away from showing that video. They already have. And so what we think is going to happen here, you know, when you're the prosecutor and you're the prosecution, you want the jury to be able to sympathize with your side of the story. Obviously, you're trying to convince them of your case. So what they want is to establish an emotional connection with the jury. And they think Cassie Ventura will be able to do that because her story is so powerful. So prosecutors are going to begin with some foundational questions with her about how Ventura met Combs, the timeline of their relationship, what initially drew her in. They'll likely use kind of like open-ended conversational questions to try and humanize her, making it easier for the jury to kind of identify with her. So that's going to be sort of one of the first steps that we have here. And then one other thing before we maybe get to another question, if there is, we know that they're going to build a chronological narrative. They're going to be looking at a timeline. It's important in all these cases to establish a timeline. When was the first incident alleged to have occurred, and is it something that just sort of happened out of nowhere, or was it a part of a timeline of events that happened continuously over and over and over and over again? And that's the key part of the prosecution's case. So the questions will follow a timeline from the beginning of the relationship to its decline, emphasizing a pattern of escalating abuse and control. That's what the prosecution is going to say. Step-by-step account reinforcing the idea that the abuse wasn't isolated or accidental, but that it was systemic and calculated. So that's something to keep in mind. Yeah, I mean, the question that we saw is, what about Diddy's apology video? And that's true. Diddy did put out that apology video, that came out directly afterward. And so, you know, sometimes in the news business, it's sometimes hard to, if you're not the one who obtained the video, right? So CNN is the one who initially had that video as their exclusive. And so for a lot of other news outlets, can you verify the authenticity of the video? You know, you have to sort of figure out a way to get your own way of making sure that that is Diddy in the video. Well, then Diddy comes out and he apologizes for the video and the actions that happen in the video. So in some ways, he is acknowledging that that's him in the video, you know, without some reporters having to check in with this and check in with that. I mean, Diddy is acknowledging that that's him in the video. He said he was disgusted with himself and disgusted with what happened there. So that was a significant moment in this entire investigation, because that was one of the first times that Diddy had publicly acknowledged just the wrongdoing involved here. I mean, and keep in mind that at this point for Diddy, it wasn't too long before that video had come out, right around the same time, but he was actually given the keys to New York City, you know, in a sort of symbolic gesture because of his influence. He had just opened up a charter school in the city. So this is someone who, of course, is...
So the defense says, and that was after the beating? Yes. Nothing further. Redirect. Prosecution says, why did you write that? Phillips said, I wanted to see them. I had no problem with what he had done. Keep it going. No further questions. Sidebar for the next witness. Okay, so they're having a sidebar. Who is the next witness? I want to know. Could it be Cassie? Could it be Cassie?
Narrative of when things happened, how they happened, who's there. We also may see the introduction of certain kind of language in a way. Maybe they're going to ask her to describe situations where the words, the key words that you want to listen for in the reporting are, words like forced, afraid, no
Need your noise for
choice,
sidebar?
controlled, manipulated. Manipulated, controlled, no choice, afraid, forced. Keep in mind those words when you start to hear some of the reporting coming out, because those are keywords to establish kidnapping in some of the different sex acts that are accused here, and they'll likely avoid sort of like the legalistic phrasing of it. The way that it may be noted in the actual indictment itself, but just sort of the everyday way you might describe it. Were you afraid? Did you feel like you could leave? Did you feel like you were allowed to do certain things? No, you were being controlled. Okay, that's manipulated. Okay, so that's kind of where we're going to see it there. And then, of course, they're going to want her to detail specific incidents with supporting evidence. So they're going to really anchor her testimony to key events already introduced in court. That video, 2016, the freak-offs, orchestrated sexual encounters, bolstered by some other witness testimony. So we heard on that first day the individual Daniel Phillip who testified about those sex acts. Yes, here we go. And that's a good point. Why did Cassie not take him to court? Not sue him sooner. So that's a good point, because that's something that I wanted to get to here, because the defense, well, of course, they'll have their chance to respond, and so after the prosecution will lay out their case, the prosecution wants the jury to take away a couple key factors. That Cassie Ventura didn't consent. She complied out of fear. Sean Combs wasn't just a bad partner. He was manipulative and abusive and orchestrator of criminal operation. This was not a broken relationship. It was about power, profit, and exploitation. That's what the prosecution wants to get across. So what does the defense want to get across on their side? Well, they want to undermine her credibility. So likely they'll highlight the settlement in 2023, the civil suit. And they'll imply that there was financial motive involved there. No doubt about it. They're going to bring that up. They're going to talk about that. They're going to ask how much was involved. Probably along the way, there's going to be a lot of objections from the prosecution, but the defense is really going to press forward with that case. They're going to suggest inconsistencies between her lawsuit, interviews, and her current testimony. So, when you have those lawsuits, depending on how far it got, you'll have a deposition, and a deposition is where you'll have sworn or said something under oath, and so you have that record.
Okay.
That record will be there.
So they're taking a break. Jurors take a break. We have some issues to deal with, so the jurors left, and Combs is Ana Maria Estevao. We'd like Miss Ventura's husband not to be allowed in the courtroom during her testimony. We may need to call him as a witness later. Oh, shit. Is Cassie next? Is Cassie next? Uh-oh.
And of course, I mean, if you're a defense attorney and you have a situation like this, which is so sensitive and so unique in a sense, given who Diddy is, who Cassie is, and the nature of their high-profile relationship. I mean, this isn't just sort of like a boyfriend and girlfriend. These were people who were photographed every time they went outside, and so the defense is also going to try to reframe the relationship as consensual. They're going to ask about instances where she stayed with Combs voluntarily. Maybe they went on a vacation. Maybe she got a gift. Maybe they were in a public appearance together. And so they're going to be able to cite these examples. Without a doubt, if that did happen, there's going to be receipts of a vacation that was maybe taken, a gift that was given. And certainly, if an alleged incident is supposed to have happened on this date and 2 months later, there's a public appearance together, the defense will say, well, this is a consensual relationship. You weren't forced to stay there. And they're going to suggest that there was coaching or manipulation maybe by the prosecution. Did you meet with the prosecutors before? Have you had a chance to do this? Have you had a chance to do that? Those kind of questions always come up. And then the question, how long she waited to report. So float the idea that her story had been shaped or encouraged by outside influences. So whether it's true or not, that's what they're going to do. And really, part of what they're going to do, and it's a very sensitive situation when you have someone who's the victim of domestic violence, who really by both sides, nobody is not arguing that Cassie in that video wasn't the victim of domestic violence. I mean, even Diddy acknowledged it. But they're going to try to paint Diddy as a victim here. That he's the alleged incidents where Combs was harmed or controlled by Ventura. They're going to try to flip the script a little bit. And they're going to suggest that the dynamic was mutual and not one-sided. They're going to try to downplay those freak-offs. They're going to say, look, maybe that's not what you're into. Maybe you're not in a position to have something like that, but that doesn't make it a crime. So that's certainly going to be part of what they say. Emphasize her age, the lifestyle that they live together, and they're going to say she was a willing participant in everything that happened. So the prosecution, they're going to make this. They're going to
use the restroom. Be right back.
The defense is going to try to pick it apart. The prosecution's goal is to show that she complied out of fear, and that this was power, this was profit, this was exploitation. At the same time, the defense is going to try to plant reasonable doubt about the non-consensual nature of the relationship without appearing to attack her character too aggressively, which could alienate the jury. Very fine line between attacking the character of a potential domestic violence victim and trying to point out inconsistencies in her stories, where maybe what she said in the deposition is different than what she is now testifying to in court. So those are some of the things that you really want to keep your eye on as you're watching some of the developments that come out today. So I just want to sort of reset the scene. It's 10:50. We know that the judge has said he's likely to approve media requests to view videos described as pornographic, which will be shown to the jury. He's giving both sides another day to submit arguments, aiming to balance privacy with public access to the trial. Okay, so what does that mean? A lot of times, the defense and the prosecutors will present different pieces of evidence to the judge while the jury is not in the box, and while the things that the jury is not allowed to hear, because they're not sure if it's going to be part of the case or not. They're not sure if this piece of evidence is going to be entered into testimony. There may be a video that the prosecutor wants to show that the defense is going to say, well, we didn't get a chance to view this video and authenticate that it's real yet, so you can't introduce this. And the prosecutor might make an argument, the judge is going to listen to that argument, and then the judge is going to decide one way or the other if that's going to be entered into evidence. That'll happen when the jury is not there. If it is entered into evidence, then what the judge is also saying is that at some point, maybe even soon, the day of the different testimony, that the public, you, me, the media, TV, all the web sleuths out there, everyone commenting on our YouTube page, and thank you for watching our YouTube page, you'll be able to see it too, analyze some of this stuff for yourself. So the headline, of course, that Cassie Ventura, who is Diddy's ex-girlfriend, really at the heart of the prosecution's case here, she is expected to testify today and potentially over the next few days. And it's that surveillance video that the jury did see yesterday on the first day of this trial that will be at the heart of some of what she testifies to. That's a good question. Will they end early? Have you ever had a good government job? I'm not saying that they end early, but a lot of times they do stick to a very strict schedule. Usually there's a break in the morning. They're not going to work. They usually don't work from 8:30 to noon. There's usually like a 15 to 20 minute break that's worked in there. And in this case, this is a lot of heavy information. There might be 2 breaks. So sometimes they need to take these breaks because like you were discussing there, they do need to talk about what will or will not be entered into evidence. So a lot of it really depends on when they can get Cassie on the stand. I don't believe that she started testifying at this point. I'm not sure if she's even in the building yet. I haven't seen those photos. But if she's able to take the stand after lunch, maybe in the 1 o'clock, 1:30 range, then yes, they probably will go until about 4 o'clock, maybe 4:30. Usually that's when court lets out. But if it's like 3:30 and she hasn't taken the stand yet, it's possible it might not happen today.
Good morning,
they're saying that this
rise
case
and
could take 6 to 8
shine.
weeks. And it's because a lot of this is there's so many details involved. There's so many text messages. There's so many little pieces of video, little evidence here, evidence there, and some of the things that they don't always agree on, that before they can move forward, the judge has to make a decision. So there haven't been any huge decisions yet from the judge. Biggest one that's come so far is who's going to be on the jury. And after they got that all sorted out yesterday, we got things rolling today. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yesterday, one of the first witnesses to testify is a man named Daniel Phillip. So initially, when a witness like him testifies, the prosecution will ask the questions. So the prosecution goes first, and so they're going to lay out this initial timeline. What did you do? What were you doing back in 16? How did you know Diddy? How did you come in contact with him? And then after you did, was there ever a time that you did X? And what he testified to is that he was hired to engage in sexual acts with Cassie. And so that is a critical piece of information. Okay, good. So 10:56. It is May 13th, and we're on the second day of the Diddy trial. And so the update that we just got here, like literally just into the newsroom, is that the judge has called for a 10-minute break, and that will be prior to Cassie's testimony. So in open court, a lawyer for Combs asked that Cassie's husband not be allowed in the courtroom while she testifies because he might be called as a witness. So in other words, they're going to ask her current husband not to sit in the courtroom while she testifies, which is difficult, because they want to be able to ask them individually. So he doesn't hear what she says. She is not going to hear what he says. Of course, she's going to go first. All right, so that was the update that we just got a few minutes ago, that it looks like Cassie will be testifying probably in the next 10 minutes. And you might be saying, well, where can I watch it? Why can't I watch it? Federal court,
I'm eating a little
cameras
breakfast.
are allowed inside. That's why we get those sketches. So there are reporters who are inside. There is an overflow room, which does have members of the public. So believe it or not, if you did want to go to the trial, you essentially have to get there today to try and get in for tomorrow.
Damn.
But there is an overflow room. There are media members there, and some of the pool updates are coming from out of there. So here's what's going to happen. Cassie is going to testify. The prosecution will be asking her those questions first. What will the prosecution try to do? They're going to establish an emotional connection with the jury. They want the jury to believe Cassie. They want the jury to believe that this is a woman who's the victim of domestic violence, who's at the center of this criminal enterprise that Diddy was orchestrating. And the prosecution needs her to be believable. And so they're going to establish a timeline. When did she know Diddy? How did she meet Diddy? What was the status of their relationship? What initially drew her to Diddy? She might say, she might say that she was attracted to him, that she enjoyed his presence. She thought, maybe try to humanize him in some ways, or at least make their relationship seem believable. And they're probably going to use open-ended questions to try to humanize her, making it like easier for jurors to empathize with her. This is a jury, 12 men, 12 women. They've never met Cassie before. Likely have maybe not familiar with her music, or even the sort of history of this case. That's why they're on the jury here. But the prosecution also wants to build this chronological narrative. So they're going to question from the beginning of the relationship to its decline.
Wow.
And what they want to establish is that there was a pattern of escalating abuse and control. So really a step-by-step account reinforcing the idea that this was not an isolated incident, this was not an accident, this was systemic, and this was calculated. That's what the prosecution really needs to lay out here. And I talked about it before, so I apologize if you were listening before and I'm repeating myself, but I think that maybe not early on here, but certainly toward the end of her testimony today, it's going to be words, some of the key words that you're going to want to listen to. Forced, afraid, no choice, controlled, manipulated. Manipulated, controlled, no choice, afraid, and forced. They're going to want to show that there was a power imbalance, that there was no consent. And so they're going to use, those words will be the ones that will sort of anchor her testimony. And they want to link it to key events. There's going to be the video, the 2016 video footage of her being the victim of domestic violence in that hotel. Pretty much nobody disagrees that that incident wasn't a domestic violent incident. Diddy's attorneys will say, well, that's not the crime that, if you want to charge him with that crime, go ahead and charge him with that crime. But that's not what this is. This is a federal case. You guys are saying he's like a mob boss. And they're saying you guys are overreaching here. But anyway, so Cassie's testimony is going to be directly linked to really the key elements in this case. The hotel incident, the freak-offs where these orchestrated encounters that are also bolstered by some of the other witness testimonies. There's going to be allegations of drugging and allegations of threats. And the prosecutors are going to use all kinds of evidence. There's going to be text, there's going to be photos, there's going to be videos, all of it to sort of corroborate and reinforce the timeline. And okay, so the question was, can Cassie's husband be in the courtroom while she's testifying? One of the attorneys, the defense attorneys, did not want him to be in the courtroom. And so they argued about that, and the judge has just said that he is allowed to be in the courtroom. So he will be inside. Possibly
he's allowed to be in there.
Called as a witness later on in the case, so they didn't want him in there while she was testifying. However, her testimony is so important that that they're going to allow that to go forward without sort of tripping up anything else.
Okay.
Yeah, and we know that look, Cassie it's a difficult position for anybody, and certainly for someone who's the victim of domestic violence, and now she is pregnant with a new husband, and this is talking about essentially her ex-boyfriend, and when you make it that simple. So here we have Cassie, who I don't know how many months pregnant she is, but she looks like she's at least 8 months pregnant. Very much showing, very much pregnant. And our understanding is that there are going to be a little bit of restrictions where she may not have to sit on the stand for hours and hours and hours on end. That she will be allowed to be given breaks, maybe after 90 minutes or so, maybe even less, depending on what's happening. This is going to be the beginning of maybe 3 or 4 days of testimony when it comes to Cassie. And so one of the things that we also expect to come up will be the 2023 civil lawsuit that she settled. Prosecutors are going to try to carefully frame it as a first step in coming forward, not a cash grab. The defense will almost certainly argue the opposite. That it was an attempt to get money, it was an attempt to do this, and that here we are today. They may ask Ventura, the prosecutors will, because they know the defense is going to make a big deal out of this. They're probably going to ask why she initially filed that case and what made her participate in the criminal investigation. So right now, we know that Cassie has taken a stand, and it's likely to be the beginning of maybe 2 or 3 or even 4 days of testimony for Cassie.
3 or 4 days.
And prosecutors are going to try to get ahead of the defense's claims of consent, financial motive, because they need the jury to believe Cassie. They need Cassie to...
Okay. So, let's see here. All rise. So she's taking the stand now. Oh, this is exciting. Okay. Very exciting. I'm going to start a new stream for YouTube. So separate it a little bit. I'm going to transfer you guys, though. For the other platforms, I'll be right here. But YouTube, I'm going to start a new stream. Let me drop the link in the chat for you guys so we can kind of just separate this part. I'll drop it in the chat. And we're going to do the Cassie testimony. Oh, man, this is going to be interesting. This could take days. I was thinking it will take 1 day or till the end of the day. No, they're saying multiple days. Oh, I thought 1 or 2 days. They're saying multiple days. Wow. Okay, that's the link right there in case you don't get transferred. I'm going to move you guys over now. Let's start it. Cassie testify.